The Big Bark. Listen up, dog owners. It's for you, all you canine lovers. It's your favorite podcast, The Big Bark, with your host, Darragh Bourke, and canine co-hosts, Bruno and Millie. The Big Bark.
Hello and a very big welcome back to the Big Bark podcast. I'm your host, Darragh Bourke, and coming to you from Ballyneety, County Limerick. I am here next to my wonderful co-hosts, Bruno and Millie. Of course, they're canine co-hosts, so they won't really be talking too much during the show unless somebody knocks at the door or rings the doorbell. So, since last week, we've had a fantastic week. We have gone to number 1 in the Apple podcast charts for pets and animals in Ireland. We have also gone on and launched our first newsletter, which went out to email address for our subscribers there yesterday, I believe. And each month we'll be putting that out to our subscribers so that they can keep up to date of what's going on with the Big Bark, just in case they missed any small details or anything, or missed our episodes. We'll have all the episode links, we'll have what's coming up in the next month, etc, etc. So today, after last week's fantastic episode with Jamie Sugu from Trails and Tales, Jamie got that right this time around. Sorry for getting it wrong last week in the introduction, but had a great week last week with Jamie. He was just like so much fun, and he's been like a real, I suppose his show has been a great episode for us, and everybody loved it. One or two little complaints about the not so PG language, but look, it's only one or two out of the couple of 100 downloads so far. By the time that this goes out, we will hopefully have a lot more downloads, so I'd imagine the ones of probably aiming at towards 1,000 downloads for that one in the next few days. So let's see, what did we get up to this morning? We went out to Mungus, out to the community park outside there. The doggies are wrecked after it, and it was a great day because we got to see where this new proposed dog park that was Jamie was talking about last week is going. Still have some concerns about that, but I'm hoping in the coming weeks to have a couple of the Limerick councillors on to chat a bit about that. Well, look, that's all that, all well and good. Let's get to today's show. And we have a very special guest today. We have Maeve Humpreys from Dogscouts.ie joining us today. Maeve, how are you doing?
I'm good, thanks, Sarah. How are you?
I'm doing good. So, Maeve, for anyone who hasn't heard of you, let's give our listeners a brief introduction to you.
Yeah, so I started my business, Dog Scouts, last year. So in the middle of a pandemic, of course, and Dog Scouts offers one-to-one training using positive games-based methods to pet dogs and their owners. So at the time I was starting the business, everyone was telling me I was mad to be starting in the middle of a pandemic. But I had been planning it for a long time, and I had told myself 2020 was the year to start, so I wasn't going to let the virus stop me either. So I kind of started dog training. Really, I became passionate about it when I got my current dog, Scout. She's a rescue, and my business is actually named after her. So she has some fear reactivity issues, so as in she would bark, lunge, growl when she saw other dogs. And I also had the experience growing up with that we had a dog with some similar issues, and I could recognise that his life was quite stressful, and I don't think that he had the quality of life that he deserved. So I decided at that point I didn't want that life for Scout. So I started to explore what I could do for her. Started with YouTube videos, books, and then I started doing some dog training courses, and the obsession just escalated. So in 2018, the opportunity came up to do the Pro Dog Trainer course with Absolute Dogs. So I jumped at that, and it was through them that I discovered games-based training. And I was just really, really drawn to the method of training. It's really innovative and fun, and I saw major transformations happening in Scout, and I really wanted to spread these methods. I wanted to help more dogs, so I started helping family and friends' dogs, and then I decided that this was really a mission I wanted to get on, so I decided to start that as a business, and it really is a dream come true to now actually be doing this all the time and helping all the dogs that I can get to.
That's brilliant. And you mentioned there, like people thought you were crazy starting up a business in a pandemic. Like, obviously the most difficult year going to set up a business, but how has it been going for you so far?
So I started it in September, so I had a few weeks, gained a few clients, and it was going really well, and we went into lockdown again. So we've been in lockdown for the past 5 months, so feels like kind of starting up again, but I've been overwhelmed with the number of people contacting me even during the lockdown that really want help with their dogs. I try to do what I can if I can give them a few tips to tide them over in the meantime, but really I can't wait to get back to doing my one-to-one sessions from tomorrow actually, so we're looking forward to that.
That's fantastic. And Maeve, like, we had a Carrie from Modra on with us there 2 weeks ago, and also last week Jamie, and the same thoughts resonating with them, and there's going to be a lot of dogs now, like, since that were, I suppose, got during COVID by people, you're going to see like a lot of behavioural issues with. And what's your thoughts on that?
I think that's a possibility, but I think generally speaking, there is kind of a lack of understanding around socialisation anyway, and a lot of the behavioural problems you would see COVID or no COVID. I think people think of socialization as being simply exposure, and the more that you expose your dog to different people or other dogs, that's what's going to make a confident dog, but that's not really the case. So I wouldn't recommend that people, for example, take their dogs out on a walk and get them to meet every random dog. Proper socialization is about building confidence and optimism, which you can do through games. You don't need to expose your dog to random dogs that you meet. And when you meet random dogs, you're really leaving it up to chance. You don't know how that dog is going to react to your dog. And for a little puppy, if a dog does snap or growl, that's not a positive experience for them. So what I would advise people to do is to look at games and how games can build optimism and confidence. It can help if you know a calm, confident older dog, it can help, but I don't think that you absolutely have to have that experience in order to be good with other dogs. So I don't recommend that people go around and just trying to find any dog to socialize their dog with. And being well socialized is also about teaching the dog to mind their own business. So can the dog be around other dogs and think that's not a big deal and be calm and engage with their owner? Because I think as well, another thing is people often think, oh, my puppy's really excited when they see other dogs, that must be a good thing. But actually, when the puppy is really excited, that means that they're aroused, meaning that they're very highly stimulated by other dogs. And fear comes from a place of arousal too. So that excitement can easily switch over from a positive arousal to negative arousal. Whereas if you have calmness, if a dog that's calm and confident when they see other dogs, that's so much less likely to happen. Another thing that can happen as well is that people will approach other dogs with their puppy, and it's fine when they're small and they're cute, but maybe when they get older, it's not going to always be appropriate. So what that dog will then develop frustration, because they will have gotten used to the idea that I get to greet every dog, and then when suddenly there's always going to be some day where it won't be appropriate, and then you can get reactivity like barking and lunging that comes from a place of frustration as well as a place of fear. So I'm not sure how much of an impact COVID is going to have, because I think it's a significant issue that exists anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I suppose like even I see it like with Bruno and Millie, like it's you can always trust your own dog. You know what your own dog is like, but like just there, like you don't know what someone else's dog is like, and you don't know how they're going to react against with your dog.
Yeah, exactly. And I've even seen very well-meaning owners trying to help their dogs. They know their dogs might bark and lunge at other dogs, and they'll actively seek out people and other dogs to bring their dog up to, thinking that they're helping to socialize their dog or helping to make their dogs feel better. But actually, they're putting their dogs in kind of an intense situation that's going to be very stressful for them. So, yeah, like it's about giving them the distance that they feel comfortable and gradually building up their optimism and confidence and changing their association with other dogs. And you don't do that by training in the situation. So that's a big thing about games-based training, is that you're setting up real life situations through games and you're building the dogs, you're working on the things that the dog struggles with and changing those struggles into strengths. And then when they are able to cope better, then it's about placing them back into the situation. So I would never advise people to train in the situation where your dog is struggling.
Okay, and Maeve, tell us then, like you're a big fan, obviously, of games-based training. So give us a few examples. Like, what kind of games would you actually do with the dogs?
Yeah, so I think that optimism is a really big concept that I think every dog should have. I think it's a real gift if you can give your dog optimism. And so what optimism basically means is, when faced with something new or novel, does your dog think this is going to have a good outcome or is it going to have a bad outcome for them? And so we can build optimism by teaching them that lots of novel situations do have positive outcomes. So I would say it's hard to explain all the games just in words. You really have to see them, and there's literally like 100 games. But I would really look at like anything that's new or different. Can you reward your dog even if they're not scared of it? They don't. I think that's the other thing, that people think that their dog has to be scared of something and then you change their association with that thing. But it could be anything. It could be a plastic bag blowing in the wind, and you can pair that with a positive outcome by praising your dog or giving them a treat. So we set up lots of novel situations that you can set up in your home, in your garden, and you can build optimism that way. So it can involve things like noises, or, visual things. I like to get dogs to walk on different surfaces, climb on different things. I love getting packaging in. I love using cardboard boxes, scattering their dinner in a cardboard box or around packaging, getting them to explore that. And that's a great way to build their optimism.
Fantastic. And I've seen from like your Instagram stories, I saw you recently got a seesaw out the back. I'm assuming that was for Scout, yeah?
Yeah, it's an agility seesaw, so we actually do agility as well. So for people that don't know what agility is, it's a dog sport. It's basically where you get your dog to do a number of obstacles, and there's competitions and stuff. We're still pretty new to the dog sports world. It's a new thing for me. I've always been into pet training and behavior training, so I'm still learning about that.
And I tell you, like for me, like watching the agility every year on Crufts, it's probably for me when I watch Crufts every year my favorite thing to watch, like the agility, especially the dogs who like go completely wrong, like, and like you see a lot of like the shelter dogs that come in and they're just doing it for the crack, like, and it's really funny to watch it as well. And you see some of the dogs in there and the speed that they go around the course at, it's phenomenal.
Yeah, it's really fun, and I think it's a great outlet if you have a high drive dog, because it uses both their brain and their body, so they get mental stimulation and physical stimulation. It's maybe not for every dog, but certainly, it's a brilliant outlet if your dog enjoys it.
Yeah, definitely. And like you mentioned there, like the mental stimulation as well, like the brain stimulation. Like, that's so important for dogs nowadays, right?
Yeah, it is. And I think that people think a lot about exercising their dog, but they don't think as much about the mental stimulation side of things. So, and games are such a good way to give your dog both of those things. So a lot of the games will involve movement and things, but they're really good for exercising their mind. And I think a lot of people might go out and exercise their dog for 2 hours a day and think, and then wonder why their dog can't settle in the evening. And often it's because maybe they've just been chasing a ball for 2 hours, and what that does is it creates a really fit dog, but it doesn't take much thinking involved there's not much thinking involved in chasing a ball. So what you're doing is getting them into a really excited state, creating a fit dog, but that hasn't gotten the mental enrichment that they need. So I really love games for that. And I love using puzzle toys and stuffable shoes and things like that as well to give dogs mental stimulation. So, my dogs will get their Kongs or other long-lasting chews every day as well. And that's a really good way to bring them down and bring them back to a state of calmness. So I'd always recommend that you balance things. So chasing a ball, is nothing wrong with that, but I would limit it and always have an activity that can help bring them down again. So like your Kongs or scatter feeding. I love scatter feeding. So by that I mean getting their dinner, scattering it on the grass or a snuffle mat and getting them to sniff it out and find it. And sniffing, of course, is another really great way to work your dog's brain.
Fantastic. And you mentioned as well, like the likes of the Kongs and stuff. One thing I'm a very big fan of, and they were very much involved in our All I Wolf for Christmas show back in November, the business showcase, Canine Connectables. They're like a big brand up around Dublin, and like it's all like kind of all different pieces of a puzzle. They're like connected into each other, and you can hide treats in like different parts of it. I tried them out there like earlier on the year with Bruno and Millie, and I think they got more frustrated than anything because it was just like, just give me the lab treats. So yeah, would you find that like the dogs get frustrated with puzzles?
Yeah, so I love canine connectables as well. We have them, but yeah, that is a thing as well. The dogs can get frustrated, and so it is also important to remember that frustration is not enrichment. So if you buy your dog a puzzle toy and you find that they are getting frustrated, look at maybe easier puzzles, or look at a way you can make it easier. So my dogs are experienced with their puzzle toys, so I would put wet food in them and I would freeze them. But if your dog isn't experienced, I would recommend using dry food first. And you can gradually increase the difficulty. So you can put a few dry treats and just condition the toy, then move on to wet but not have it frozen. You could even use the canine connectables and stuff them but not piece them together because they're like a puzzle. And that will also make it easier. And then I mentioned there scatter feeding in the grass. That's another activity that's quite easy. So a dog is less likely to get frustrated. But you can build their tolerance to frustration over time as well by making the challenge easier and then gradually building it up.
That's fantastic. And like again, like big shout out to Lauren and James and Canine Connectables, who were so good to us back at Christmas, and like hopefully have them on back on the show again later on through the year. Maeve, tell us then for our listeners, what does a typical day look like for you, like when you're out meeting like with different dogs and their owners?
For an initial consult, it would be an hour and a half, and any follow-up is an hour. So I like to have a bit more time to speak to the client. So I'll always, let the client know that I'm coming and give them a few instructions. I'll give them a call before I go into the house. I don't knock on the door. I know it can be kind of stressful and triggering for a lot of dogs, so we want to start off the session with the dogs being in a nice, calm, comfortable state. I'll have a chat with the owner first to figure out what their struggles are and what their goals are. And then I'll instruct the owner on the games that I pick out. So I boil any dog struggle down to 3 concepts. So whether that's confidence, optimism, focus, disengagement, whatever they need. And then I'll give the owner a prescription of games to play with their dog. So during the session, I'll play the games with the owner, or I'll instruct the owner on playing the games. So really with dog training, it's about building the relationship between the dog and the owner. So it will be me instructing the owner on how to play the games with their dog. I think that sometimes it can be a perception of people that if they hire a dog trainer, they're going to train the dog for you. But my job is to teach the person. You cannot train a dog in an hour or 2 hours a week. It needs to really become a way of life. And I love games because they can be done in a really short amount of time. I recommend people do about 3 minutes per game. So, dogs have a short attention span, so they learn better in short amounts of time, but it's about incorporating that throughout the dog's life and throughout their day. So that's really how I would do it with people, and I recommend that they keep it up. I think dog training is like a muscle. If you stop working on it, it does go away. Like any skills that we have, if you stop practicing, it will go away.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love what you say there about like you're basically instructing, you're training the owner how to train the dog basically, which is what's really needed, because I've seen them with trainers in the past myself where, like you said there, they go in for an hour and like they don't actually show the owners like what they need to be doing, which is kind of pointless because you need to be practicing it and doing it like on a daily basis.
Yeah, exactly. And like I said, games really become a way of life, and it's not just, train your dog in your kitchen, then train your dog in your back garden, train them in your front garden, train them in the car park where you go to walk them. You need them to generalize all of these skills that they're learning so that they can do them anywhere. And there's no use in me training the dog for somebody when actually at the core of your training with your dog is the relationship that you have. And there's no point in me building a relationship with your dog. The dog needs to have that relationship with you and associate all those positive experiences with working with you. So I could train a dog to loose leash walk with me, and they'll start to have a really strong positive association with me. They'll want to hang out with me. You want to train the dog to hang out with you. That's what the relationship is all about. And that kind of brings me on to the reason why I train in terms of concepts instead of behaviors. I think other forms of dog training focuses on what behavior I want the dog to do. But I look at what are the underlying struggles that are causing a certain situation for that dog. And then through the games, we turn that dog's struggles into strengths. We reshape their brains. Dogs' personalities, as all of ours, are fluid. They're always changing, and we can have an influence on the way that they're growing, or we can leave it up to chance. And through games, we have an influence on building optimism, confidence, all the personality traits they need to be successful in life.
That's fantastic, Maeve. And Maeve, what's the goal for the future now that we're coming out of lockdown? How big? Obviously, right now you're locally around Limerick, Newport, Tip. So, what's the plan? Where do you want this to go to?
Yeah, so I'm continuing with my one-to-one training. At the moment, in the future, I'd love to do group classes, puppy classes, and I'd love to look at making classes around different skills that dogs need. So puppy classes, off-leash and on-leash success, household manners, things like that. For the time being, I think the one-to-one format works best with COVID and with the unpredictability of that. But yeah, for the future, that's definitely, I'd really love to get a venue as well, because at the moment I'm going to people's homes. And I think it's good that I'm going to people's homes because it's where the dogs are most comfortable. So it's a good place to start. But yeah, I'd love to get a venue, and I think that would help me to be able to help more dogs as well.
That's brilliant, Maeve. And listen, Maeve, wish you all the success with this going forward, and be sure to keep in touch with us, and hopefully we'll have you back on in the future. Maeve Humpreys of Dogscouts.ie. And Maeve, actually, if anyone wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way?
Yeah, so the best way would be to go to my website. It's Dogscouts.ie. And
all your contact details are obviously there.
Yeah, you can. My email address and my phone number is there, and you can actually contact me through the website as well. And from my website, there'll be links to my Facebook page and Instagram as well.
Excellent. And you're pretty active on Instagram, I can see that. And we'll continue to follow you on Instagram ourselves. Thanks very much for joining us today. Bruno and Millie are looking very excited now. They want me to go and get them some more canine connectables or some cons or some lovely games to play with. So hopefully we'll have Maeve back on again in the future. So that would be very exciting to see how Maeve is progressing with Dog Scouts. And coming up next week, we'll have another exciting guest. I'm not going to reveal too much just yet, but I will have more details and a little teaser of that on Instagram probably by Monday. So let's see. I think that's basically everything for today. So if you want to follow us, you know where to go. You go to Facebook, you can go to Instagram, you can go to Twitter. Our handles there on Facebook and Instagram are the Big Bark Podcast. God, I screwed that one up rightly there. Let's see. On Twitter, we are Big Bark Podcast because apparently having "de" in it was a bit too long for Twitter. We are now also on TikTok. Haven't been used to that much, but I'm going to start using a hell of a lot more. And that again is the Big Bark Podcast. We're not really going to do Snapchat because, well, not really many people that I know on Snapchat anymore. And you can also go to our website for all our past episodes. You can listen in on Spotify, iTunes, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Castbox, Podchaser, Podtail. Let's see, I think Amazon Music as well now. So you can listen in on all those as well for all previous episodes and, of course, obviously this one and all future episodes too. So that's all for today. Be sure to follow us on Patreon as well, and be sure to just give us a few donations there on Patreon. We love seeing donations coming in. It'll help us buy some new podcast gear so we can continue to do this. Well, look, once again, I'm Darragh Bourke, host of the Big Bark Podcast, joined by Bruno and Millie. And from all of us here at the Big Bark, have a barking mad week.
The Big Bark, listen up dog owners, is for you, all you canine lovers. It's your favorite podcast, The Big Bark, with your host Darragh Bourke and canine co-hosts Bruno and Millie. The Big Bark.